Thank you for joining me in this little video about writing a claim. Now, I know you're all taking the AP Gov test or you're preparing for an AP Gov argumentative essay, and we're going to discuss how to write a good claim, a claim that is thorough enough to lock in and secure that point. You want to secure that claim point. Now, a claim only needs to really be a thorough sentence. I always use a because in that sentence because well, it makes sure you're adding in a thorough claim. It's make sure that you are thorough enough and specific enough to get that point. And the claim is really important because you can't earn a lot of points without that claim locking it in. So I have three prompts here, and we're going to practice some writing of claims to see how it can be done. So join me as we go through how to write this claim. First question I have here is develop an argument as to which model of democracy, participatory pluralism and elitism, is most prevalent in the US government today. Now, this might make a good argumentative essay. And what we have here is a prompt that you can choose any direction you want to go with it. You can argue participatory, you can argue pluralism, you can argue elitism. And most of the AP Gov tests are built that way, so you can choose your path. Some paths might be more difficult than others, like participatory, and that's okay. And some paths might be easier. So don't be afraid to choose whatever path you feel like taking. And make sure you think about what evidence you're going to use in those following paragraphs when you decide what path you're going to take. For example, I will start off here and I'm going to choose elitism. And I'm going to say, let's see here, the model. Okay, now up to this point, I said the model of democracy most prevalent today is elitism. Now, this is basically restating the prompt and choosing one of the three choices. Some people might put this down in their essay, but this is not enough to really lock in that claim point. You have to say something more than that. And some people add in another sentence that goes beyond, but really you can do this in one sentence. And I might point out here right now that your claim is your first paragraph, really. It's a thorough, longer sentence. You don't have an introduction. You don't have any of the, attention getters like an English exam. So make sure you get this claim perfect. So the model of democracy most prevalent today is elitism. And I'm going to say because of the Electoral College and campaign finance laws. So here's what's going to happen next. Whenever I continue this essay, so when I continue it into my body paragraphs, the two middle paragraphs, my first paragraph is going to be about the Electoral College. It's going to be about the Electoral College and how it creates a more elitist system. Now, what's perfect about this is the Electoral College is in the Constitution, so I can utilize the Constitution as one of my foundational documents. Now, did I think about the documents first? No. I just thought about things that would make um, the democracy more of an elitist democracy. So I started with the prompt and what I wanted to argue first, and that's what you should do too. Tie in the foundational documents later. You should be able to argue, a lot of different things and pick up a foundational document uh, in the mix. You're using the foundational document to make your argument about the Electoral College creating an elitist society. So focus on that. And if you looked back at your claim and you're like, man, I can't tie in any of the foundational documents, that's when you revise it. But really, you need to be able to make a good argument before you worry about tying in those foundational docs. Let's look at the next one. Develop an argument as to which branch of government is the strongest. So let's say I take this one and I say the strongest So here I go. The strongest branch of government is the executive branch. I've restated the prompt so far. Now I put because, and I put it in all caps because it really points out that you're going beyond just restating the prompt. You're saying a little bit more. And remember, the next two things you're going to say are going to be your topics of discussion. They're going to be the first. The first one's going to be the topic for your first paragraph, and the second one's going to be the topic for your second paragraph. So make sure that you have some good points here. So I'm going to say the strongest branch of government is the executive branch because of. So I wrote because of the control of the bureaucracy and the commander in chief role. Now, these are both something I could talk about the Constitution with. So I could talk about the role of commander in chief with the commander in chief role that's in the Constitution. I could write about controlling bureaucracy and kind of the executive function, the chief executive role. So I have some different ways to take this, and both of them involve really, taking the Constitution and utilizing that to my side. I wasn't worried about which direction I was going to go. The Constitution ties into a lot of different things. I might have talked about how, okay, I could replace commander in chief with um, the executive branch is the strongest branch because it consists of one person. And then I could talk about Fed 70. So if you take it in a different direction that's kind of styled after one of the Federalist Papers or styled after Brutus or whatever it may be, go ahead. These are just the first two things that came to mind. I'd spend the first paragraph talking about controlling bureaucracy and how that impacts people the most and how that makes them very, very strong. And then I would also focus in on the commander in chief role. No matter what the legislative tells you to do when it comes to foreign policy and the military, the president controls those troops. And lastly, we have a prompt here that says develop an argument as to which level of government, federal or state, should respond to a natural disaster. And I'm going to write something like this. Here I have the prompt. I spelled because wrong, but I'll survive. The federal government should respond to a natural disaster. So I chose the federal government over the states. And I'm going to choose because this time my points are a little more broad. The first paragraph, I'm going to focus on that they have extensive resources. So I'm going to talk about the amount of money and the amount of resources that the bureaucracy and the executive branch have. I could mention FEMA in there and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, that they're prepared to handle natural disasters of all kinds across the United States. Now, my second point is where I'd probably tie in the Constitution, for example. The federal government has the Commerce Clause, and it has the ability to really do things beyond state lines. So let's say this emergency involves something that goes like on a state border or multiple states. The executive branch is able to provide a very specific, response. And let's say, I mean, maybe I don't like that line. I'm not liking it as much right now. I'm going to change it to something else, and I'm going to change it to can provide one uniform response. And that, I kind of like that one better. The federal government can provide one uniform response when there's a natural disaster that goes beyond one state's lines. So, for example, you have the coronavirus epidemic. The coronavirus, you know, that goes across multiple states, and having one central uniform response makes the messaging clearer. Whereas having 50 different responses, you're not sure who to listen to, you're not sure who to trust, and it creates a lot of potential problems. Federalism can make, understanding a topic or concern difficult to comprehend because you have a lot of different messages, a lot of different orders, there's different laws in different states. And sometimes when a big disaster is going on, a natural disaster, a virus, a disease, a hurricane, an earthquake, when something like that's happening, sometimes you want one big response rather than a bunch of other responses. So maybe having that central government would be a better idea. So, and I kind of just rambled off a good start to a paragraph. So claim writing is, you know, it's really important. It's really important to have the right structure. Argumentative essays are all about structure. So make sure that you restate the prompt, choose your side, and remember, it doesn't matter what side you pick. They're probably all going to be good sides to choose from. And then figuring out what your two paragraphs are going to be about. What are your two topics of discussion? Do not focus on the um, do not focus on the foundational documents yet. You can always come back and change something to fit in those foundational documents, and most of the time, foundational documents are just going to fit in naturally. So don't be afraid to start with what argument you would make if you had to make an argument, and then branch off into fitting the foundational documents in. Okay, I hope this helps with understanding how to write an argumentative essay. Don't be afraid to ask me any questions. Have a great day.